The crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling of Vienna's most famous concert hall sparkled like diamonds that evening.
Waiting to be filled with expensive wine that most people couldn't even pronounce. This wasn't just any party.
To an unforgettable evening.
The crystal chandeliers of Vienna's most famous concert hall sparkled like diamonds that evening. This was an event where millionaires wore their best jewelry, discussing art and gliding across marble floors. Everyone belonged to a world where money whispered, not shouted. Well, almost everyone. Victor Albrecht stood at the center, holding a glass of red wine. He was the reason they came. At 38, he performed in every major concert hall, his recordings selling thousands. Music critics called him a genius, and Victor knew it. He wore his talent like an expensive coat. The Steinway in Hamburg has better action, he said, but this one has history. Brahms himself might have touched these keys. The couple nodded, captivated. Victor loved nights like this, the applause, the attention, being the star. Near the refreshment table, far from Victor's glowing circle, stood Elena Novak. She was 42, though lines around her eyes made her look older. Her simple black dress and comfortable shoes spoke of a different world. Elena worked as a nurse at Vienna General Hospital, usually on the night shift. She hadn't bought her ticket. She'd won it in a hospital raffle. Her coworkers had insisted, "Go enjoy something beautiful for once." So here she was, feeling like a fish trying to breathe air. Her eyes drifted to the stage, to the magnificent grand piano, a sleeping giant. It was a Bissendorfer Imperial, she knew, by its extra keys and distinctive shape. Even from this distance, she could almost feel the weight of those keys. Magnificent instrument, isn't it? An elderly man with kind eyes smiled at her. Yes, she said quietly. It's a 290 Imperial. You can tell by the extended bass register. The man's eyebrows rose. You know your pianos. A little, Elena replied, then added, the hammering mechanism gives them a warmer tone. Less percussive than a Steinway, more singing. The man looked at her with new interest. Are you a musician? Elena's throat tightened. I was, a long time ago. Before the man could ask more, a burst of laughter erupted from Victor's group. The sound was sharp, cutting through the gentle murmur of the party. Elena glanced over and saw Victor gesturing dramatically, telling some story that had his audience in stitches. The elderly man followed her gaze. Talented man, he said, though his tone suggested he had opinions about more than just Victor's talent. Though talent and kindness don't always walk hand in hand. Elena didn't respond. She'd learned long ago that some truths were better left unspoken at fancy parties. But Victor had noticed them looking. Or rather, he'd noticed the elderly man, who was apparently someone important because Victor's expression shifted. He excused himself from his group and walked over, bringing his wine and his confidence with him. Professor Hartmann, Victor said warmly, shaking the elderly man's hand. I didn't know you'd be here tonight. I wouldn't miss it, the professor said. I was just having a fascinating conversation about the tonal qualities of Bissendorfer pianos. Victor's eyes slid to Elena for the first time. He took in her simple dress, her uncomfortable posture, the way she held her small plate like a shield. Oh? He said, his smile growing wider. And what would you know about that? There was something in his voice. Not quite mean, but not quite kind either. The sort of tone adults use when they're humoring a child who said something cute but wrong. Elena felt her face grow warm. I just noticed it was an Imperial model, she said softly. The extended bass range affects the resonance. The resonance, Victor repeated, and now there was definitely amusement in his voice. How observant. Professor Hartmann frowned slightly, sensing the shift in tone, but before he could speak, Victor took another sip of wine and looked at Elena with the kind of attention a cat gives a mouse. "You seem very interested in that piano," he said. "Perhaps you'd like a closer look?" And that's when everything began to change. Elena's heart started beating faster. She could feel eyes turning toward them now. Victor had that kind of presence. When he spoke, people listened. When he moved, people watched. "I'm fine here, thank you," Elena said quietly, trying to smile, trying to fade back into the wallpaper where she belonged. But Victor wasn't letting it go. He turned to the small crowd that had gathered around him, that same playful smile on his face. "We have a piano expert here," he announced, his voice carrying across the room. "She knows all about resonance and hammering mechanisms." A few people chuckled. Polite laughs that made Elena's stomach twist. Professor Hartman put a gentle hand on Victor's arm. "Victor, I don't think—" No, it's wonderful," Victor interrupted, his eyes bright with wine and mischief. "We should encourage appreciation for music in all its forms, from all people." The way he said "all people" made it clear he didn't mean it as a compliment. More guests were gathering now. Conversations had stopped. The party had found something more interesting than small talk and expensive wine. They had drama. They had a famous pianist and a woman in a discount dress who'd made the mistake of speaking about things she supposedly shouldn't understand. Elena wanted to disappear. She wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. But she was frozen, trapped in the spotlight of Victor's attention and everyone else's curiosity. "Come now," Victor said, gesturing toward the stage with his wine glass. "Don't be shy. You clearly know so much about the instrument. Why not show us what you can do with it?" Elena's mouth went dry. "I couldn't possibly." Amidst the soft glow of chandeliers, an elegant charity event unfolded. Laughter and polite chatter filled the luxurious ballroom. Victor, a man of deceptive charm, surveyed the room. His smile was wide, yet a hint of cruelty flickered in his eyes. Elena, dressed simply, felt a burning discomfort. She stood apart, her presence a stark contrast to the opulent surroundings. A whisper cut through the air. Awkward. Elena overheard, the words stinging, amplifying her self-consciousness. Her voice was small, almost apologetic. "I haven't played in years. I'm just a nurse. I work at the hospital." Victor's reaction was exaggerated, dripping with condescension. "A nurse? How wonderful," he declared, mocking our sincerity. A ripple of giggles spread through the crowd. Elena felt like an exhibit, exposed to their amusement and judgment. Faces around her showed a mix of amusement, discomfort, and curiosity. She felt trapped, like an animal in a zoo. Professor Hartman, a distinguished figure, attempted to intervene, sensing the cruelty. "Victor, this isn't—" But Victor cut him off, his voice gaining an edge, implying Elena was a pretender, unworthy of their attention. Then something shifted within Elena. A quiet resolve ignited, like a match struck in a dark, silent room. Her life was a testament to quiet strength. 12-hour shifts, tired but dedicated, caring for others, holding a patient's hand, offering comfort, a silent promise of care in room 304. She comforted grieving families, a pillar of support in the waiting area, day after day. Endless stacks of paperwork, a constant battle against fatigue, fueled by coffee at 3 a.m. Her small apartment, bills on the table, grocery shopping, a humble life, far from this opulent world. Yet a hidden language resided within her, a memory of hands moving gracefully across piano keys, speaking volumes. With a determined expression, Elena spoke. "All right." The room, once buzzing, fell into an expectant silence. Victor's confidence wavered for a brief moment, his eyebrows raised in genuine surprise. But his arrogance quickly returned, a dismissive smirk replacing his momentary doubt. He spread his arms wide, a theatrical gesture. "Excellent. "Please, the stage is yours," he announced, challenging her. Elena set down her plate. Her hands trembled slightly, but she clasped them, hiding her nervousness. She began her walk towards the stage, the crowd parting before her, a path of anticipation and judgment. Her face held a complex mix of nervousness and unwavering resolve, a battle fought within. Whispers followed her. "This is going to be embarrassing." But Elena kept walking, towards the piano, towards her moment. "Poor thing," another voice said. "She doesn't know what she's getting into." Victor leaned against the wall, crossing his arms, wine glass dangling from his fingers. He looked relaxed, entertained. Professor Hartman stood apart from the others, his expression troubled. He looked like he wanted to stop this. Elena climbed the 3 steps to the stage. Her shoes clicked on the polished wood. The piano waited for her. She sat down on the bench, adjusted the height, her fingers finding the mechanism automatically. The entire room held its breath. Elena closed her eyes and let her fingers hover over the keys, feeling the electric moment before touch becomes sound. And then she began to play. The first notes weren't what anyone expected. Not chopsticks, nor a simple melody a child might play. The first notes were powerful, clear, absolutely certain. Elena's fingers touched the keys, and Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 filled the concert hall. Someone in the audience gasped. Victor's smile froze on his face. This wasn't just playing. This was something else entirely. Elena's hands moved with speed and precision. The opening chords rang out, demanding attention. This piece wasn't easy. Professional pianists spent years mastering it, requiring perfect accuracy and control. And Elena was playing it like she'd been born to do exactly this. Her body swayed slightly with the music. Her eyes were still closed, and on her face was an expression no one had seen before. The crowd stood completely frozen. The whispers had stopped. The amused smiles had vanished. People weren't watching a disaster anymore. They were witnessing something they couldn't quite believe. An elderly woman near the front brought her hand to her mouth. Her eyes were wide. A younger man in an expensive suit leaned forward, his champagne glass forgotten in his hand. Professor Hartman's troubled expression had changed to something else. Recognition, maybe, or remembrance. But Victor's face was the one to watch. The confidence had drained away like water through a broken dam. He stood up straight, no longer lounging, and on his face was pure shock mixed with something that might have been fear. Because he knew. In that moment, he understood that he hadn't challenged some amateur. He'd done something much worse. Elena continued to play, and the music grew more complex. Her fingers flew through passages that would make most pianists nervous. Octave jumps, rapid scales, sections where both hands had to work in perfect independence, creating 2 different melodies. And it was heartbreaking. That was the thing that made people start to cry. Elena wasn't just playing the notes correctly. She was telling a story with them. Every phrase carried weight. Every pause meant something. The soft parts were so gentle, they made you lean forward to hear. The loud parts crashed over you like thunder. And the sad parts, the melody Rachmaninoff had written to express loss and longing. They came from somewhere deep inside Elena that she'd kept locked away for so long. A woman in the 3rd row started to cry openly. She didn't even try to hide it. The music shifted into the 2nd movement. The famous melody, used in movies and commercials, the one everyone knew. But hearing it played like this, with this depth and understanding, was completely different from a recording or film. Elena's hands moved with absolute certainty. She knew every note and what every note meant. She knew when to push forward and when to hold back. She knew when to let a sound ring out and when to cut it short. She knew the architecture of this piece, like she knew the rooms of her own home, because she did know it, had known it for decades. Professor Hartman suddenly grabbed the arm of the person standing next to him, My God, he whispered. That's Elena Volkov. The name meant nothing to most people there. But to a few, the older guests, it made them stiffen and stare harder. It can't be, someone whispered back. Look at her hands. Look at the way she moves. That's her. Elena had no idea people were whispering her old name. She was somewhere else entirely. She was 20 years old again, playing this same piece in a competition hall in Brussels. She was 17, practicing it in a small room, with her teacher listening, nodding, saying, yes, exactly like that. She was 15, hearing this music for the first time, and knowing, absolutely knowing, that this was what she was supposed to do with her life. The memories flooded through her and into the music. Every sacrifice, every choice. Every morning she'd woken up at dawn to practice before school. Every night she'd fallen asleep with her fingers still moving through passages in her dreams. Every competition, every performance, every moment of pure joy when the music came out exactly right, and every loss too. The music carried all of that. Victor had moved closer to the stage. He wasn't leaning anymore. He was standing at full attention, watching Elena's hands like a man seeing a ghost. His face had gone from shocked to something else. Something like horror, mixed with understanding. Because he recognized what he was seeing now. He'd spent his whole life studying piano, learning from the best teachers, performing on the greatest stages in the world. He knew talent when he saw it. He knew the difference between someone who was very good and someone who was extraordinary. And what Elena was doing right now was extraordinary. The music built toward a climax. Elena's whole body was involved now, leaning into the fourth sections, pulling back for the soft moments. Her hair had come slightly loose from its simple style. She didn't notice. Nothing existed except the piano and the music, and the feeling of finally, after 23 years of silence, being allowed to speak again. When the final chord rang out, Elena's hands stayed on the keys for a long moment. She could feel the vibration of the strings. Slowly, she opened her eyes, and that's when she heard it. Silence. Complete, total silence. And then someone started to clap.